Commissioner Neil Anderson,
Here.
Commissioner Glover,
Here.
Commissioner Brewer.
Here. Thank you, ma'am. All right, everyone should have received a copy of the minutes.
Yes.
Is there any additions or corrections? If not, can we get a motion to approve the minutes?
Recording in progress.
So moved. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Turn this over to Director Paul Glazier and for his director's report.
All right, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
First, before I get started, for those that may not know, I want to congratulate Mr. Leggett on his reappointment to the commission. So that was announced, Governor Sanders announced that in February. So for those that did not know that, I just wanted to make that public today. So we're glad to have him. Thank you, Coach. So the last couple of months for us has been busy, since our last meeting with outreach. It seemed like February was the month of conferences and workshops. I know personally, I spoke at, like 5 or 6 different meetings. We had a soil and water conference in Jonesboro, rice meeting in Stuttgart, Discovery Farms conference. I spoke at Arkansas State University for irrigation class. And then just yesterday, did the rice and leadership class. And then later this week, we have, a water forum at Windrock's doing, so I'll be for that. So it's been very busy, and that's just me. That doesn't count all of our staff that have been out promoting programs and talking about what we do. So, and tied to that, you know, we try to promote our programs as much as we can. And this year we had, for our unpaved roads program, we had the most applications that we've ever received, which is 13 unpaved roads projects. So we're excited about that. So we want to make decisions, you know, and have a lot of applicants when they apply. We've also been working with RDOT. If y'all remember the I-40 rest area and the Bisco project. So we've been working with both of them and making really good progress. It's right now, it looks like that RDOT will likely come with some funds. They're going to approach their commission in April to help fund some of the infrastructure to get from the rest area to the city. And then our goal will be to work with the city to make any substantial upgrades they need to be able to handle it. So this will be water and sewer, but I'll give another report in May once the highway commission has a chance to leave their funding, but we're making progress. Good. So I look for a much reduced cost than this project. So, we're also in the process of securing bond counsel and financial advisor. We had some contracts that expired, so we're going back through that process. So that puts us in a position to be able to leverage bonds. And that would be both revenue bonds in our SRF program, which is our state revolving fund, but also the general obligation bond. So we need to get those contracts in place. And our team is working with the Office of State Procurement to do that right now. And then last will be or almost last is we had our Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act appropriations before the legislature in February. So this would be plus ups to our clean water and our drinking water program, along with we got a $1.7 million grant through EPA for hypoxia.
I'm not with it today. I am so sorry. Okay, 2 things. I don't have volume on my Zoom call.
You got muted.
Huh?
And then the National Dam Safety Program also received for about $46,000. And then last, we have been working on a feral hog project in northeast Arkansas, and so we got $650,000 congressionally directed spending to hire 4 technicians in that part of the state to actually go out and target landowners. And this is a little bit different than some of the other feral hog efforts that we're working on. And so we've got all 4 of those technicians in place, and they're actually putting out bait sites and monitoring bait sites and trying to build landowner contacts. Because the goal there is to really be more proactive, not just wait for somebody to call us, but actually go out and meet with landowners and see what kind of damage they're having.
What counties will it be in, Chris? You know?
So those counties are Clay, Craighead, Green, Mississippi, and Poinsett. And so they'll be focused in watersheds. And so this will complement, you know, we have a 12-county pilot program right now that we did with NRCS. and APHIS. And this is complementary to that. It's a slightly different approach. Lower numbers there, so you can actually maybe achieve eradication in some of those watersheds. The thing about hogs is as you focus on higher densities over here, if you don't watch out, you'll turn around, the lower densities will be higher densities. So this will give us a chance to really go in and target some specific watersheds. And so
Is there overall, is much progress being made in feral hogs?
we're trapping a lot of hogs, you know.
But they repopulate so quickly.
Yeah.
Do you think the numbers are less or equal to or greater than they were, say, 5 years ago when we started this project?
Yeah, and the thing is, you know, we never had really good population estimates for how many hogs are here. Just as part of the pilot program, that 12 county pilot, we hear anecdotal information from producers that say, I haven't seen a hog, you know, in months or 8 months. And so we get a lot of that feedback. So they're making progress, there's no doubt about it. And we're getting, you know, everybody's getting better, technology's getting better, traps are getting better, they're coming out with new trap types all the time. And, you know, the biggest thing that you don't want to do is educate the pigs because they're very smart and you gotta try to
What?
plug them in a trap set. Because if one sees that gate go down,
See mama.
they're going in the trap, you know. it's a relationship. So really, really smart. But that concludes my report. Taking the question. All right.
No questions for Chris? Thank you. All right, the report, Mr. Saki.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members. On the financial report for the month ending 2/28/23, Water Development Fund, our total, we reported a total disbursement of $1,910,558. New obligations for this reporting period total $1,078,415. This leaves $4,956,613 available future water development projects. On the water sewer solid waste, disbursement total $518,541.42. No new obligations to report for this reporting period. This leaves $7,225,849.43 available for future water sewer solid waste projects. On the general obligation bonds, unchanged since the last report, total overcommitment still at $35,452,778.61. That concludes the financial report.
Yes, sir. You know, I know we have $35 million that we're overcommitted. I understand from the cash flow, we can still do that because of the timing, et cetera. Do we have any kind of guidelines that we use as to when we try to go back into the market to sell additional bonds? Is there some kind of formula or triggers that, okay, now's the time? Because surely we're not doing it, looking at the market, or we'd have done it
You know,
6, 8 months or a year ago.
you know, we did a bond sale, yes, it was April of last year. May of last year, April, sometime in there. And so we still have a lot of loan that's not dispersed. It may be obligated, but it's still set.
Yeah, I get the difference in dispersed and obligated.
And, you know, and ultimately, we requested enough authorization, both from this body and the previous administration, to do another bond sale this year. Obviously, we have to wait until this session is over, because you have to wait till revenue stabilization is done. And so, because since that's a general obligation bond program, but we will definitely approach that at some point in the future.
So that's the controlling factor, is getting the session over with and revenue stabilization completed before we sell a bond.
It's
Okay.
definitely part of the consideration for sure.
I'm just thinking about the increase we're seeing in interest rates.
Yeah.
What we have seen is what we're seeing right now.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It's on our mind.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you. All right, moving on to the legal report, Ms. Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Just wanted to update you on a few bills that we're looking at in the session. Your general appropriation bill is just in process, normal process that appropriation bills go through. And we'll continue to watch that as it goes through. House Bill 1403 provided for its an appropriation bill for $6 million for it. And I'll just read this to you: for expenses associated with the implementation of water quality best management practices to improve water quality in the Illinois River watershed. And so that's appropriation only. There is no funding source for that $6 million at this time. House Bill 1515, if you remember from legislative session in 2021, they passed Act 605, which provided for oversight of retail water providers and provided for when rate studies would and should be completed. There's been a bill this year to amend that act. It's House Bill 1515. And just a few of the issues that it addresses. Act 605 provided for any rates that to be increased as a result of a rate study to be increased within 1 or maybe 2 years. This bill will allow that to be incremental increases over a span of 5 years. And it also repeals the provision that a water provider will be required to do a rate study in the event that they have a major development project. I think the thinking there is the legislation already provides that you have to get a rate study every 5 years anyway. So that one made it through the House, City, County, Local Committee this morning. So it's still very early in the process as well. We'll continue to watch that one too. Senate Bill 326 is an appropriation bill, and it provides for $50 million for water and sewer treatment facilities grant program. And as I said, now that's appropriation only, but there's been a separate bill filed that would provide a funding mechanism for that. And that would provide that the monies would come from a fund called the Securities Reserve Fund. If you have any questions about that, maybe you should ask Anissa, because I don't know anything about it. And of course, that fund, it's one of those that the law says, okay, here's what's paid out of that. And after that, then here's what's paid. And after that, then here's what's paid. So we've been added to the list. We're 11th on the list. So it remains to be seen what type of funds will be there when they get down to us. And then finally,
Who makes the decision about, municipality or entity gets the money for sewer and water treatment?
yeah, it's a grant program established underneath this commission.
Okay.
So that would be something where we would need to, the commission would probably need to adopt rules like you have for your other funding mechanism program that would outline how that would all occur. And then there's been another bill that will amend the Water Resource Conservation and Development Incentives Act. That act originally for projects that involve conversion from the use of groundwater to the use of surface water and the tax credits for that. It did only apply for projects located within critical groundwater areas. And then you may recall last legislative session, that was amended to include not just the critical groundwater areas, but counties contiguous to those counties with critical groundwater areas. The bill that's been filed this year will include Chico County. in that list, because what happened is if you think about a map, you have critical groundwater areas in here, here. And then last legislative session, they added the counties that are contiguous to all those counties. And it left Chico County sort of on an island by itself down there. So this particular legislation just simply adds Chico County to the list of areas that will be eligible for those incentives as well. So that's all I have.
What was that? Was that a Senate bill or
Yes,
what was that number?
that is, I'm sorry, it's a House bill. That's House Bill 1624. Representative Beatty is the primary sponsor on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Moving on to Conservation District Board elections. Megan.
Good morning. I have 2 items on the agenda for your consideration this morning. The first one is certification of district elections. First off, I'd like to thank Mary Elizabeth Lee for her work on elections. Starts back in November, making sure everything, back and start the training to the districts, and then making sure all the information gets out starting in November up until the time of election. So thank you, Mary Elizabeth, for your work on that. Last Tuesday, 25 districts held elections, and those results are in your packets. And approximately 554 votes were cast across those elections.
When the number of voters seem to be increasing.
Yeah, it's this group are set because 25 different ones every year. This set, I believe, had about 100 or 200 more votes this election cycle than last. So I was pleasantly surprised by the turnout.
All right, any questions about the list that Megan has presented here? If not, we'll need a motion to approve this.
Second.
All in favor?
All right, the next item I have for you is appointments, reappointments, and then we had one change of position. So we have 3 appointments, 5 reappointments, and the 1 change of position.
But one of those on the reappointment is pretty questionable.
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna say. I'm over with.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Roy, you get to keep your.
Fluid rolling.
Yeah.
I'll put you out there for-
There you go.
Thank you, man.
Hey, Megan, can I ask you a question?
You sure can. I left the well, but I will come back.
Missed my chance, but, no, I read it, we completed 12 audits of the conservation districts.
Complete audit, yes, but they're in progress, so we're doing 2 years worth right now. And so they're in different phases of those, and some of those could be that the contractor is finishing up, their piece of it, getting that information. I do know that all counties have been reached out to. They're engaged and working with that contractor. They're coming to the offices and going through that information. There's been some district employees that have retired and stuff, and so working through a little bit of that's going on as well.
Has there been any deficiencies that you know of?
No significant findings. There might be a few little things here and there, receipt that might, but nothing significant.
Good deal, good. Thank you.
All right. Got the groundwater report. Corbin?
Good morning.
Mr. Chair, committee members, I'm Corbin Cannon, and I am very excited to make this presentation today because since July, I've been the new guy. And as the rules stand, I think after I survive this, then I'm no longer that guy. Thank you all for being here for that. So, 22 groundwater report. Get it up here. So basically, as there's a lot of information. I'm gonna try to, I think I've been allotted 20 minutes. I'm gonna try to keep it under 40. We're gonna keep it pretty simple because you guys are familiar with a lot of these slides already. So 2022 groundwater protection and management report. So, do I have a clicker up here?
Yeah, right there.
Okay, so these are the 5 study areas that we're all to be familiar with. And who is from this one right here? Because I'm from Oklahoma originally, and I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that one.
Which one?
Purple one down here?
The Shay?
No, the entire area, the Buffton. That's okay, all right, I got it now, I'll know it for the next time. So, so these are the 5 study areas. Of course, we have 3 of those which have been critical groundwater areas since, some of them since 1996. And actually, this is the Grand Prairie's 25th anniversary for being designated critical groundwater area. So let me be the first to say happy anniversary on that. The Mississippi River Valley Alluvial Aquifer this year, there were a little over 1,000 measurements taken, individual measurements taken, 414 unique wells were measured in the spring and 343 wells measured in the fall. So we had 332 when we looked at the wind change map that was similar from last year to this year. So this, again, is something you're pretty familiar with probably. We're looking at the water level altitude above sea level. And as we can see, the elevation in the north part of the state is higher than it is in the south part of the state, but you can start to see, the areas of historical concern in the Cache and the Grand Prairie. So this is the depth to water map. So again, really bringing out those 2 areas of major concern for the coastal depression in the Grand Prairie and Cache for that. These dots here with the letters next to them are where we have hydrographs. And again, all these are going to be in the report. There's actually quite a few more, but I didn't want to expose you to 150 slides today. So a lot of that's going to be available in the printed report. And there's something else at the end that I want to show you that I hope is going to be useful to you to look at this information on your own. So this is depth to water map again. This is the saturated, the saturated percentage of the aquifer here. And again, this is really, standing out nicely for us here. This line right here, I'm sure you can't see it from there, but the 50% saturated line and below, those 2 areas are significantly below 50% for the majority of the critical groundwater areas. And these little red dots in the center here are below 10%. So that's not what we want. Taking a look quickly at precipitation reports. Now, this is for the entire state for the year of 2021. So you can see from March to September in the growing season, we had 5 months that were above average precipitation. 2 of the months, August and September, were below. But overall, for the year, we were a little over an inch more than average precipitation for the entire state. But for 2020, we were over 12 inches difference from 2020. We were considerably drier than we were in 2020. So taking a look at something that's probably more specific to what we're talking about with this report, we're looking at the eastern part of the state here. This is the precipitation for, the Mississippi River Valley alluvial plain. And you can see in April and May, there was a considerable dry period. The yellow to orange, it represents a 1 to 3 inch difference from normal precipitation in those months. And the pink and purple goes all the way up inches more than normal for those months. So we had April and May was fairly dry. June had a kind of significant increase in water coming in during that period. Okay, so on the basic change maps here, for the 1-year change in alluvial aquifer, we went up 0.6 feet. So that's a little bit different than last year's report. Last year we went down 0.64 feet. So we're kind of teetering on a level here. Let's see. We had 332 wells, of which 183 were in decline. So we're still at 55% of the wells that we measured in decline, and that's concerning. Taking a look at the longer trend, we're seeing something fairly similar. We had a 1 foot increase from the 2012 measurements.
And again, out of the 286 wells we had there, we had nearly 40% were in decline, looking at the 10-year. In the fall measurements we took, 343 wells, as I said, 91.25% were in decline from the spring measurements, which makes sense because it's at the end of the growing period. People have been pumping for 5-6 months at this point. And the decline of 3.42 feet is pretty, consistent with what we've been seeing in previous years after the growing season. So I wanted to show you these here to give you a brief rundown. In the report, there's much more detailed 1, 5, and 10-year reports for each of these areas. This is the cache. This is the overlay of the contours of the depth of water. So you can see right there is our area of concern with the Kona Depression. And here is one of the hydrographs we have. This in the Kona Depression, you can see that we're going back to 2006. It's a pretty consistent downward trend in that cone. And the other hydrograph I'm going to show you here is moving down towards Wynn, and we're looking at the expansion of that cone down to the south. It's been gradual, but it's still continuing to move southward. And then I also wanted to show you this. This is the percent saturated. Here's the 50% saturation line for the cache, and you can see that that percentage of of that study area is considerably below 50%. Down to this area here, which is 5% or below, right in the center of the Kona Depression. So just taking a quick look at the water level changes in the cache. On the 1 year, it was nearly a foot up, and in the 10-year was just over half a foot increase. I wanted to take a look at Grand Prairie in the same way that we did it in the cache, and those are two of our groundwater areas. And you can see the cones of depression there. We have this hydrograph here right around Lono. And we see the historic trend of a decline, and it seems that it's potentially leveling out. One of the reasons that may be is because we may be near the bottom and people are stopping, withdrawals so much from that. And there's kind of only one way to go from there is up, right? So as people, divert to surface views and, other wells drilled, then you're potentially going to see that area increasing. If we look down here, again, there's a little bit of leveling out, but the trend that we had in the cache in the Grand Prairie, we have too, where we see this cone that we expect to continue to move southward when we're continuing to pump more water than is believed to be sustainable to pull out every year. And then here's the 50% check on this, and actually it encompasses a much larger section of the Grand Prairie than it does of the cache. Yeah, and here's the 1 year, it's a 0.08 increase for the 1 year and 0.54 for the 10-year average. So again, positive numbers for long-term trends, even though they may not be as large as we'd like to see. Okay, on the Sparta this year, we had 243 total measurements, 99 individual wells. Now, it's considerably less than we would normally hope to have. There's a couple situations that affected that. There was understaffing in our department, and some of our partners. There was some misunderstanding with some of our partners about who was going to be doing what. And so we've had long discussions and figured out, the roles and responsibilities a little bit better. And so moving forward, we should have a better number of collections for the Sparta in the coming year. Oh, so most of the collection we did have was in South Arkansas. So what we've done here is taken that and done a contour based off of the South Arkansas measurements, and the hashed in lines there are actually from previous years' reports that show what was going on at that time. The green dots in here are actually the measurements we have from those areas this year, and they do seem to correspond to those contours being fairly similar. Okay, so depth of water, again, you have the same kind of thing we have with the alluvial here, the larger dots with the letters next to them, or we're going to have the hydrographs in the report. That includes the ones up in the northern part of the state. The 1 year change on the Sparta was 0.87 feet, with percent of these wells, 58 of them, showing a decline. Now, again, since we have a specific area that had so much concentration of those measurements, this is not necessarily a super accurate reflection of what we're expecting to see in there. We're going to have a little bit of discrepancy because we're focused so much in the South Arkansas. And over a 10 year period, 13.17 foot of increase in this. And again, there's some huge increases down here in the South Arkansas area, which that was 1996, I think, when that became a critical groundwater area. So we're coming up on 30 years since that, and there's some positive changes there. Okay, here's the depth of water in the South Arkansas. You see the cone of depression there. Hydrograph right on the edge of that shows that if we go back to 2000, 4 years after it was designated as critical groundwater area, we see a pretty consistent increase happening on the water level. Now, looking outside of that area, up in the more northern part of the area, we can see a lot of variation going back to 2000. As far as the levels bouncing up and down, but we do see an overall trend that seems to be fairly level, which kind of indicates we're not losing that area that wasn't in decline as we're increasing that area down in the south, which is good news. All right, and then here it is, the 1 year change was 1.11 feet increase and a 10 year of 15.47 increase in the South Arkansas area. Moving on to the water use. This is the map that represents the reported water use for the alluvial plain. Now, the red are greater than 300 million gallons per day, the yellow are 300 million gallons per day, and the green are 0 to 100. Now, I think this may be a little bit misleading, and we tried to take that into account because this was from 2020. This is water use numbers from 2020. And of course, I don't know if anybody remembers 2020, there was something going on where everybody was staying at home and wasn't getting out and maybe not going in and reporting water use level to the different places. And the places were not necessarily open and weren't as staffed as they should have been. So what we wanted to do, first of all, is take a look at the reported water use here. You can see that there's some of the historic counties that are going to have the higher water use are still there. You've got Arkansas and Clay, Deshay and Lone Oak and Woodruff, but there are some that have little to no reporting at all. I do find it hard to believe that Chico doesn't use any water at all
That's true.
in 2020. So we're taking a look at that, and what I did was I went through and looked at our 2015, 2018, and 20 reports that we had and compared the number of reporting stations for each year, and you can see that some of them considerably dropped off from the previous years. So to try to account for that, went in and created this chart. And basically want to compare 2015 to 2020. So we take a look at how many fewer we had in each county in 2020 than we did in 2015. And then taking all 3 years, created an average use per station reporting. So this is going to be an estimate based on averages. We're not talking about really exact science, but we are going to get a fairly decent idea, I think, of maybe how much we're underreported for this year. So based on that, I had a new graph that shows the blue is the reported usage in 2020 from the counties, and the orange is what we've estimated if the reporting numbers, if the stations had been similar in number to 2015, this is what we expect we would have seen for the amount of water used. So you can see there in Jackson County, it was a considerable increase. And Chico, Monroe, we have some areas that I feel like there's more water being used than we can see from the 2020, but this maybe gives us a little bit better idea of how much is being used. Regardless, one thing we do know for sure is that we're using, about 45% more than we should be out of the alluvial. Only 55% of what we're using would be considered sustainable. And about 60%, I think, of the Sparta is what we're considering would be sustainable based on the USGS modeling that determined how much we could annually sustainably withdraw from those two aquifers. So here's another one that we wanted to present today, the 2020 water use by crop. Obviously, we have 34% for rice, 33% for soybeans, a little over 12% poultry watering, and then 11%, right at 11% for corn for grain. So I know that some people are interested in the duck hunting up there, which is 0.55. At least that's the reported use for duck hunting in 2020. So a big part of what we can do to affect this, obviously, is going to be the tax credit program. In 2022, we had 79 projects approved, and of those, 42 were land leveling projects, 27 were water meter installation, 7 surface water conversion projects, and 3 impoundments. So all these are really important. We're going to, for the continued, management of this resource. Okay. So this is what I wanted to get to, and Galen, if you can try to pull it up for us. This is, since I don't have a printed report for you today, I do have this virtual report that's it's going to be on our website. It's available right now. You can go in there to this. You want to full screen it? Yeah. And this is everything that's in the report as far as the figures go are going to be available here. So if you want to click on alluvial aquifer tab right here, and then do me a favor and hit that second button down, Galen. Pull up the depth of water map. So this is kind of interesting. If you want to pick one of these larger dots here. You click on that, and what it does is it pulls up water level. You click on this image right here, and it'll pull up the hydrograph for that specific location. You can take a look at it that way. You can zoom in and out on the map. You can focus on a specific area you'd like to know what the data is showing for that area. I think that's kind of hopefully useful. You want to go back to the main page there. So yeah, and that's just the larger one. These little smaller dots here have the same information minus the hydrograph, but you pull up that, and then you'll have to scroll down a little bit, Galen. On the map, okay.
Yeah, I was trying to.
That's right. It's very intuitive, obviously.
Yeah.
But the idea is that we'll have all of these maps that we're showing in the report in this format. There you go, the aquifer thickness, saturated thickness. We can see all the data for each of these points as you go in there online. There you go. That's a nice spot. So on that, 164 foot of thickness, 119 saturated. So that's, 75%. And then right there it is on the contour line, 73%. So I think that's going to be one of the nice new ways of taking a look at this information for you. Like I say, all the different study areas are going to be listed in there. You're going to have the 1, 5, and 10 year reports for all the different study areas, as well as the overall alluvial and the Sparta. And that really is it. Did I make it under 40?
Quick last question.
Yes, sir.
This great information,
Yeah.
what are you gonna do with this information?
Well, what I'm going to do with it is we're going to hopefully, I think one of the biggest things we can do is kind of just educate people, make sure that people know what the situation is and try to get, information about tax credits that'll help to affect these water levels, and just get more people involved and concerned about trying to conserve the water as much as we can.
And I'll add to that. I mean, there are projects and things going on in these areas that are critical groundwater. And so there's a lot of work going on, all from a research standpoint side. I mean, this is really just knowledge. This is like showing you where you need to work. And so then there's programs that come in and try to help out and try to either conserve water or find alternative sources so that you're not totally dependent on groundwater sources in some of these areas.
And you've made assumptions as to the cause for the declining groundwater?
It's not really, it's essentially, we know that we use a lot of water. I mean, and so we use it faster than it can recharge. And so the point is you either have to figure out ways to conserve water or you have to find alternative sources. So the two big irrigation projects those are alternative source projects so that you can kind of get off the groundwater dependency and use some surface water.
Is the biggest decline caused by increased irrigation, increased population, temperature changes? You don't have a,
I think it's gonna be all of these things have some effect on it. There's no one, solution to the problem. But I mean, if we're talking about the MIRVA specifically, I think for the largest part, that's gonna be an agricultural aquifer. It's being used for agricultural purposes. So, that's where we have the most ability to impact it. When we talk about, more conservative ways of using water on the farms, using surface water in place of groundwater situations, those are gonna be helpful. Tailwater capture, is gonna be important. It's all these things working together. It's gonna make a difference. There's not, like I said, there's not one cause, there's not one solution. It's gonna have to be a myriad of things that are happening to make a positive impact.
Isn't it very important for industrial use?
Oh, the MIRVA, yeah, it would be. And I think a lot of industrial in, I know at least South Arkansas is gonna be a lot of it's gonna be off the Sparta.
Right. There was a large project in the Sparta that El Dorado did to pump out on Washita and provide, water for a lot of their industry. There. Instead of pulling it out of the ground, they did a diversion project and they're using surface water.
have we done any kind of study that would relate to, as we try to utilize every acre of land in our farm, and we spray our ditches, so the water runs off faster, gets to the creeks, gets to the Mississippi River, and gets to, instead of soaking into the soil. Have we done any studies on any of that?
Well, I don't know that we have specifically in this agency. I know that your studies are ongoing, and I think we're partnering with some of the people that are doing those studies in different areas where you're looking at, bevels, ditches, and you're growing the plants that are going to help to retain the water in there. Is that flood level that continues to recharge in the area, captures more of it. And I know that, of course, we have the Biomeda project and other things that, Ed Swaim and other people working on as far as the irrigation projects that are also kind of focused on not only irrigating, but also creating sources of recharge for water into the aquifer. So, I mean, they're ongoing. And the information that we're collecting, and like Chris was saying, it's a knowledge thing, but it's also something that's being fed into these other projects that are happening. And hopefully we're going to be able to partner with some of those and see if we can have positive impacts.
And there's also, I'll add this, I mean, there's a lot of work going on, for example, like with cover crops, which, making cover crops so that you retain soil moisture, so that water doesn't run off, basically down deeper into the soil, keeps the soil more saturated instead of running off really fast. So you're seeing a lot of advancements in new technologies, new practices and things like that. They're not widely adopted, but at some point in time, they may be widely adopted. And that's what you have to do. You have to implement the practice, and then you have to show other people that it works, and it may not, won't cost them money to do it. And that it's, cost effective, and that they see some real benefits. But there's a lot of advancements going on. I mean, all the way from the industry level, all the way down to, academia with science and research, and then producers themselves, they see, that maybe their wells aren't producing as much water as they used to. So they're having to adapt.
Well, obviously it takes more fuel, to bring water, whether you have to bring it from the ground up to there, it can cost you more money, doesn't it? Deal.
Amen.
So.
One thing I've noticed is the row rice taking a good hold now. They've got a herbicide. You don't have to keep the rice field flooded, because a lot of that water you flood a rice field with will evaporate. You got to keep
Yes.
making it up.
Yeah.
And everybody I know that's doing it is took them death. Their water use is way down, and the yields are nearly as good as the other. They only improve that with genetics.
Well, if we, of all the things you mentioned to help turn this around, which eventually is gonna have to be turned around.
Right. I mean, if we keep being unsustainable in how much we're withdrawing from the aquifer, then it's eventually going to be depleted to the point where it's going to be significant for everybody.
Well, it would seem to me that the irrigation projects would be one of the bigger
Yeah,
helps there.
I think you're right, and I think also though, you're also right that we need to look at some of the other ones too. I mean, certainly, reservoir, where you devote maybe a portion of your acreage to creating your own surface water retention. And then using that to irrigate will help. There's a lot of different ways that you can impact that. And the big irrigation projects are nice, and I'm looking forward to seeing what impact they have. I think one of the big things is that looking back at the water use numbers and what we kind of calculated as maybe more realistic estimate of what we used in 2020, the better water use numbers we get, the more we're going to be able to come back to people and say, okay, this is how much we save. If we look at the estimated use, we maybe did 200 million gallons a day less from 2015 to 2020. But that's again, an estimate based on an average. So if that swings one way or another, we could be using more or less than we did in 2015. And that's kind of why we need to get more accurate reporting so that we can, show the benefits of these things are taking place. And that way we can say, this is one that had the most impact. The irrigation project had the most impact, or the land leveling had the most impact, whatever it is that we've discovered is best. But I think it's always going to wind up being a multitude of things that have to be put in place to have a significant impact.
The irrigation reservoirs have made a big impact on that big. I mean, I can throw a stone and hit 13 irrigation reservoirs on my perimeter. And of course, they use the lowest ground they have. Well, now it's getting to the point that they're gonna have to take out some good land to put these reservoirs on rather than using the low end of their farm. But I've seen a big difference just since the reservoir construction went on. I don't see much of it going on now. And like I say, everybody's used their worst ground to put these on. So now the choice of whether you use the best, some of your better ground or go to a different system.
It's a real balancing act because, you have to, like you say, value you have the land and the production off of that land versus, the long-term question is, am I going to have water on this farm for generations to come? And we want to make sure that is the case, that you can pass that down. So, any other questions?
Also, with the reservoir systems, they pump that dry in July and August, and without the irrigation projects, they can't replenish it. That's a big reason for the irrigation project.
And if you guys have any questions about the tax credit program, Christie would be happy to answer them right back there, I'm sure. With that, I would like to close and say that, I'm glad I was able to keep it under 40. I had a 5-minute set of one-liners. I did cut out on Blake's recommendation. If you guys want to see me at the comedy club, I'll be Friday and Saturday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Had a ARPA update, Ryan?
So we want to give a quick update of where we are on the ARPA projects that were approved at the November meeting. All right. So like I said, this is going to be really quick, but we did want to go over a couple things. One is to remind you and everyone of the schedule that we developed that we're under. So as you recall, we did approve all the projects in December, and we set a May 31st, 2023 date to make sure all projects that are going forward, they have to have all the funding in place to move the project forward, meaning match or additional money over the 5 million cap that they need to have in place. So we are anticipating a rather lengthy May meeting coming up where we get a bunch of projects that need to provide the rest of their match funded, approved. Also, just a reminder that they have to be under construction by the end of the year. And we did all those 2 dates because this last date is set by the federal law that the projects have to be complete by the end of 2026. And while that seems like a long time off, not for construction projects, we're still working on ERA project from 10 years ago. And that's just now getting complete. So usually some of the projects, when you're doing a treatment plant upgrade, can take multiple years. And the supply chain issues we're facing right now is extenuating those timelines significantly. So just keep that in mind. And, the one thing we also got you to approve is If someone can't meet these dates, then we would move to a project that you approved on the wait list and move the funding to them so they could get the project done. Worst case scenario for everyone is we get to December 31st, 2026, we have not spent all the money and the money's taken back by the federal government and that project is, does not have the funds to pay the contractor.
We want to avoid that, don't we?
We do. That's why, I just want to be, why we're being so strict on these dates is we need to make sure people are moving forward. It's not uncommon for you to approve financial assistance and projects not move as quickly as we would anticipate.
To get to that point, you need to prepay, that'll put up a bond.
Well, we have these dates in place, so by the end of May, if they have all their funding in place, and if they bid it by the end of the year, and what we're gonna require is those bids by the end of the year have to have a construction completion date prior to 2026.
I understand that date, but I'm talking about in actuality.
Yeah.
You get prepaid, that then put up a bond. Instead of having to return the money.
Sure, yeah, we'll work with, Department of the Treasury to see what they'll, if that would be acceptable. Or if those, because they want the project to have to be complete, so.
What timeline are you looking at where, you gonna be making a decision on a go or no go, and then you start looking at the people on the wait list?
So there's two things we've already, and you'll hear in a minute, we've already had one project decide to not move forward. So we have generated a small amount of money. That was a pretty small project. So that money will go to the wait list, eventually to a wait list entity. The other thing is at the end of May, if they can't certify that they have all the money they need to do the project, that would be a time where we would go, they could lose their grant and we would move to the wait list. Or same thing, if they, at any time during the year, they set up a schedule that doesn't meet these deadlines, then we would withdraw the money at that time and move to a wait list. Now, folks on the wait list would have to meet a schedule. It won't be won't be these dates because they don't know of their award yet. But they still would have to move quickly because that 2026 date is set for everyone regardless of, who they are.
And those things, those town wait list, they really ought to go ahead and get their other funds lined out.
We have advised some of that. It is a balancing act. Some of them are moving forward with the project no matter what, and some would tell you they're only going to move forward if they get the ARPA grant. So we have advised everyone, we feel it's best to move forward so that if we come to you, especially if you're high on the wait list and say, hey, we now have $1 million, your grant is funded, they can then meet these deadlines, meet a version of these deadlines. Maybe not exactly these deadlines, but they'll have to move quickly to meet the 2026 deadline.
What about the rate studies? Are they moving forward with that? Because they have to have that done up front, don't they?
They do right now. If House Bill 1515 passes in its current version, that might eliminate that requirement for major development projects. But currently, you're right, water projects, sewer projects do not have to do a rate study, but water projects do have to get that done. Now, they don't have to have it by the end of May, but they'll have to have it done by the end of the year when they move forward with construction.
They know that, I guess.
They do. We have been very clear that they have to meet rate studies and what we call water plan compliance, all those things in order to move forward. Yeah, I'll get to that real quick. I just want, if there was any questions, remember 105 drinking water projects all across the state in blue, 134 million and change, a little less than 135 for drinking water. Remember, we did have wait list projects, an additional 37 projects for 50 million. As was just mentioned, if you're high on the wait list, there's a good chance that we could have funding for you. If you're low on the wait list, there probably is not. And remember, this wait list is only applicable to ARPA. We use the ARPA criteria for it. It's not how we fund other projects and how, and Debbie will talk about how we do projects under our other funding sources. These were only for ARPA.
Through the slide.
Yeah, it says it's working good. Somehow I've lost control of the dancing.
Yeah, just give me just 1 second. I'm trying to. See in there. Hold on a second. Do it now.
Yeah, if you could advance.
Advancing this.
All right, so remember, this is the wastewater applications. There were 52 of them. Those projects were a little more expensive for award, a little over 135 million. And then, you know, the red dots all across the state, and then there we go. And waitlist projects, we had another 25 million, 50 million in additional work. Same as we talked about before, if you're at the top of the list, there's a good chance you could get awarded. Also, if a project were to come in under budget, and we've actually seen some projects bid over the last month come in under budget now, which is the reverse of what we've seen all last year. There also could be money available if a project comes in under budget too, for additional work. But once again, this wait list, like I mentioned, is only for ARPA, not for our other programs. All right, so these are the things we've done today. We did issue 862 letters to everyone who applied, 157 to the ones awarded, the waitlist ones, and the additional projects. We have 3 ARPA award recipient training sessions to tell them how the next steps and how to access the funding and what we'll be working on. We had them all complete a survey, to all the awarded ones to complete a survey to determine the status of their project. Are they, you know, in some cases, the project could already be complete because you just had to do the work after March of 2021. Are you in progress, or do you still need funding? Do you still need to have funding to go forward? So immediately there are a small group of projects that are already complete. We've asked them to submit us their documentation showing they followed all the state laws regarding the projects to get their award out. And we have developed draft ARPA agreements that will actually be going out today for a group of the projects. So this is what we found out. There are 67 of the projects that have their funding but have not started. So you or someone else has previously awarded them funding, or they didn't have a match. We have 35 projects currently under construction, meaning they have their funding in place. And some of those are projects we're already working with under other funding. 16 projects are already completed, and we're working with them to verify how they did the project to get their award out. One project has rejected their ARPA award to date. Several others are still contemplating it. And we have 38 projects that still need additional funding by the end of May to ensure that they move forward. And just so you know, that's estimated about 37 million in additional funding that they'll need for all 38 of those projects to move forward as approved. And so that's what we're working on. We know a lot of folks, it's taken us a little time to get to this point, but we'll be getting everyone under agreements and start seeing money to flow in the next, I'd say month, we'll start having money to actually flow out. And then in the May meeting, like I said, we anticipate bringing you, we've told everybody that we will try to work to make sure that if they needed match, that we could have that ready for approval at the May meeting.
What about more money coming? Didn't we talk at that, what was it, October meeting? That there would maybe another bunch of money coming?
So the state has not allocated, I think, a portion of ARPA dollars. So that's nothing we've requested or can do, but if the legislature and the administration decided to send additional dollars to this program, our recommendation to y'all was to go ahead and fund the wait list. But that has not happened yet. I don't believe they've made any additional funding allocations since the first of made that recently. So there's still
The legislature held up, releasing that money, didn't it?
So, yeah, they did. There was an executive order issued. Our money was not held up at all. It moved forward. But I think any additional requests are still sitting there. They haven't allocated additional dollars.
Right.
But I'm anecdotal. I don't have exact knowledge of that. That's my reading of what I'm reading in the papers.
So does the state have additional ARPA money that's just sitting there?
The legislature and the administration is not allocated. We understand all the ARPA dollars, but currently we don't have a request in for additional dollars. But should they choose to allocate more money,
They need to be moving along pretty soon. Why wouldn't we have a request in for additional dollars?
there's not a process currently for an additional request. There's no longer a steering committee, ARPA steering committee.
Well, hey, if we don't get it appropriated, use it, the money's gonna go back.
Yeah, you're way over my pay grade.
Why do you have to have a steering committee that tells you how to ask for money?
I mean, how come the secretary can't ask for it?
I think there has to be a process.
Yeah.
And so, we don't know what that process is. That's all, I think that's all. we can say.
Well, why wouldn't you try something and then instructions you can adjust?
They might just say, heck, here's $1 billion.
I don't understand.
Perhaps, I guess.
Well, you know, we've helped some members of the legislature out, and I don't see why wouldn't we be able to go to them and sit down and say, look, you know, we got all these folks on the wait list. You know, we could use that money.
I think there are a lot, I mean, there are a lot of folks that know already kind of about the process that happened. And I think that's why you see even, you know, one of the bills that Wade mentioned about creating another program. I think they understand the need for water and wastewater funding. But for that funding, there were lots of requests. And so frankly, I feel very fortunate that we were able to get the 270 million or actually 280 million. If you look at the 10 million that went to irrigation projects, I feel very fortunate that we were able to get those dollars because there were a lot of people that asked for money that didn't get it.
But what we're suggesting is, instead of just sitting here, why aren't we proactive to see if we can get more money?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, but I would say that there's a process for, you know, there'll be a process for doing that. We just don't know what that process is.
Well, it would just be a shame if the money went back to the.
Yeah, we gotta start before May 31st. That's just a little over 2 months.
Now, that's a deadline only for our program to make sure we meet the 2026.
Well, this new money though, is sitting over there in the legislature, wherever it's sitting there. And they hadn't decided what to do with it. It's be the same guidelines for it. It's what we've currently got, wouldn't it be?
So no, the deadlines from the law is you have to have it committed by 2024 and done by 2026. That's the actual law out of the ARPA law. We've already met the 2024 by them allocating it to us. We put these internal deadlines in simply to make sure we don't have a project not hit 2026.
Projects the same. But the deadline for the project completion is the same.
That's correct. Yeah, and a 2024 deadline to have the money committed, which has, you know, hasn't, obviously, we're still 2 years from now.
Well, they must have some idea how they're gonna use that money. I can't believe that. State of Arkansas government, not the legislature, but the state of Arkansas has millions of dollars sitting there and they're just like, oh, I forgot, we got that money over there.
And they very well may. We don't know what that is. I mean, they funded a lot of broadband projects, and then they funded a certain amount for water. And, you know, I know just in one of the committee meetings, there were a lot of folks asking for hospital funding. So there were a lot of requests coming in. We don't know what their intent is. Like I said, we're happy that we got the 270. And if they want to give us more, then that'll be great. Then we'll deal with it if that decision doesn't.
Any other questions? Ron, thank you. All right, financial assistance, Debbie?
Good morning, how are y'all today?
Thank you.
First, we're gonna kind of do a review of the rate burden factor or the analysis that we use to determine funding allocations through the 5 programs that we know that we bring the recommendations through to you guys.
What does it say? It's protected you.
We could use some of that money, didn't you, Glicker?
Technology sometimes.
It's really great. Not so much.
Yeah, but it's.
One thing while we're waiting on this, we wanted to go through this process because it's different than the ARPA process. So the ARPA was a scoring criteria, totally different. This is how we typically make all of our funding decisions in our other programs outside of ARPA. And so if we can get the technology, we'll
Hang on, wait. Okay, you're good now, so just click back in.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Okay.
So first, I just wanted to remind you of which programs I'm going to be reviewing specifically. We have the two federal programs, the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. It primarily does wastewater infrastructure capital improvement projects. The Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Fund, which does primarily water system projects. We have the Water Development Fund that can fund any projects that are related to water sewer, solid waste management system program. That one can do water and wastewater and some other smaller projects as well. And then we have the Geo Bond program, which can do traditional water and wastewater projects as well as the irrigation project. So how do you apply for our funding? It's a multi-step process. First, you have to go through the Water and Wastewater Advisory Committee. That's a committee that does kind of a preliminary review to help the project plan, to make sure the regulatory agencies get a preview and can help guide them to make sure they have meet all the requirements. Then that committee will issue a recommendation for where to get funding. It doesn't tell them where to get funding. It just says your project is eligible under all of these funding sources. That committee is comprised of all of the funding agencies in the state, including the federal funding agencies, USDA, Rural Development, and a few others, along with some nonprofits, the regulatory agencies. There's about 20 different folks that sit on that committee to help with that. Once that is complete, they can submit a funding application to our office in order to get a recommendation to you guys. In order to get that recommendation, especially if we're going to recommend for the Clean Water or the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, they have to be on the project priority list as well. Once we get the applications, we do a financial review on them. And this is where I'm going to talk about the rate burden factor, how those calculations are made. Once we complete that, we typically send out a recommendation letter. A lot of our folks call that the offer letter, but it's really what we will recommend to you and to see if they're willing to move forward with that recommendation.
Who kind of heads up that committee? Somebody's got to be.
The Water and Wastewater Advisory
Yeah.
Committee, our office chairs that committee.
So that application really comes here.
Yeah, this pre-application comes through our offices here. And then all that one does is a preliminary review of the project, and then says, these are the multiple funding agencies you can apply to. It doesn't actually make a funding recommendation.
Just mention who all's on that committee, too, that typically attends those meetings.
So Natural Resources Commission chairs it, Department of Energy and Environment, Department of Health, Economic Development Commission, U.S. Department of Agriculture, Rural Development, Arkansas Rural Water Association, Communities Unlimited, representatives of the congressional delegation, and we have other nonprofits that may participate as well, and then
Like
Delta
what?
Regional Authority, and Communities Unlimited is the primary nonprofit that comes because they provide direct technical assistance. And Rural Water, those are the two. Communities Unlimited is the primary nonprofit that participates. It is an open meeting, so others can attend as well.
They meet right at monthly.
Monthly, the first
So it's a month.
Wednesday of every month. Yeah, you have one question? Okay. So the first question when we get a funding application to make a recommendation is which program do we fund it out of? So the federal programs are subsidized with federal grants, so we can offer a lower interest rate on those. So we always look at those first. However, this is the first tier is always going to be based on dollars. Because when you get down to the smaller projects, it's not always a cost benefit to go through the federal program. There are some additional requirements with the federal program that may not make it cost effective for the smaller ones. So we look at $400,000 and less. We typically go through one of the state programs. Anything 400,000 and more typically goes to the state revolving fund. Just to give you an idea of what we've approved, what you have approved, what we've recommended, you guys have approved in the last 3 calendar years and also includes the January meeting for 2023, $773 million in funding projects for water and wastewater in the state of Arkansas. And I did a little breakdown so you could kind of see how they were done. The most important column that's going to be more important as we move forward is that principal forgiveness or grant column as we move forward with the new funding that's coming through. So the affordability criteria, rate burden factor, how do we decide? How do we make a recommendation to you on how much loan, how much principal forgiveness or grant is available for each entity, depending on what's available in each individual funding source? We're first going to look at the monthly user rate and an annual dollar amount and compare it to the cost of 4,000 gallons of water. Excuse me, let me restate that. User rates for 4,000 gallons of water, annual cost compared to the 3-year average of the median household income for that community. If there's not an MHI available for the individual community, we may have to use the county. But we typically work with them to come up with an agreed on median household income. And we get the median household income from Euler each year. In order to be eligible, to be considered, not to get, but to be considered for principal forgiveness, your rate burden factor has to be at least 1.5%. So things in addition to that we have to look at when we're looking at the 2 federal programs. We also have to look at if it's at 1.25 and they have at least 51% of low to moderate income, they can also be qualified for principal forgiveness. Also under the state revolving funds, if you're doing a regionalization or an EPA defined green project, that gives you additional priority to receive principal forgiveness, and you must be on the project priority list to receive principal forgiveness. So here's an example of what this looks like. You take your cost for 4,000 gallons per month times 12 months, divided it by that 3-year average of the median household income. That will give you your rate burden factor. Here's a dollar example to come up with 1.28%. So when we look at these, when we go through this estimate, the total project cost is $2 million. The community median household income is 21,000. We're going to recommend principal forgiveness of 1.6 and a loan of 500,000, which requires a 25% increase in user rates. This is how we come up with this. This is what it looked like when we first got their application. No loan, start out. This is our initial review. They were at 1.4%. When we ran the first analysis, it was greater than 1.5. So then we look at funding availability, how much principal forgiveness do we have? What other projects are requesting it? And then we come up with a recommendation that meets as close as we can get to meeting, keeping them close to 1.5. May have to go over if there's not enough money. So that's kind of where we go. Reasons that folks can be greater than 1.5. A lot of times it's right here is where they're greater than 1.5. They'll come to us and their initial analysis will show that they're $100,000 or $200,000 in the hole, running at a negative. So something is supplementing their water or wastewater system throughout the year. When we do our analysis, we look at that independent. Unless they have a dedicated source of revenue to supplement, we're going to tell them you're going to have to increase your rates to get this, where you're covering your O&M for the year, then we'll add in any additional costs to get the loan. So sometimes the initial increase of 25 or 30%, that's not with the loan, that's just to cover their O&M.
But that goes over big.
Yeah.
No. When they come in for $100,000 loan and I tell them you have to raise your rate 60%, they're like, but it's only $100,000. But you're running at 100 to 150 in the hole already. So we have to get you so that you can cover your O&M. So that's a tough conversation. Go ahead.
Which Act 605 with the rate studies will help with that. When they eventually come to us, they should be where they need to be. so that hopefully folks won't be coming to us in the hole already.
Because if they don't, these projects are gonna break down and
They'll just be back in another 5 or 10 years to get the system upgraded. That's a pattern we see with a lot of smaller systems. They're struggling to maintain. They're not sustainable in their current status. So they come to us every 5 to 10 years to get a grant or a loan to rehab their system. And then it's a revolving process. They just can't sustain it at the current rates. So they don't put the money into the O and M. So then the system starts to deteriorate, the rates stay low. But then they're here in 10 or 20 years. And a lot of times what happens is they'll come to us at the point where they still have existing debt. They still have 10 years to pay on their debt, but the system's falling apart. So they have existing debt they have to cover, plus now they have new debt as well. So working with this process to come up with this combination between the principal for the is a little bit of an art that we really work hard to give them the best deal we think we can get to them based on the rate burden factor criteria that we have in place and available funding. And it's the available funding that really makes the grant principal forgiveness part difficult. What happened?
I wonder how ULA comes up with those income levels.
Bring back.
That was gonna be my question, because I know for Lake Village it is totally wrong.
I believe they
Plus
use
the
the
LMI.
community survey. That's the accepted federal survey.
But these are guidelines that have worked over the years, just like in the lending business, you have some guidelines that are not applicable to every individual, but tend to work over the time. And every lender faces these questions daily. So this is, but if you're just newly elected, you don't like going back to tell folks they got to raise the rate. And so it keeps kicking the can down the road. So it's easier to go back to say, we'll get this grant, but this is a condition. So it's not us, it's those bad guys in Little Rock making them do
I get to be back at.
it.
Are there any other questions on this process or how we calculate this? Yes, sir.
It's a great presentation, but can you run us off a copy of the slides?
Sure.
Thank you.
are you through with this?
I'm done with this piece and I'm ready to move into report on the deal bond compliance and then the financial
Do
recommendation.
you see 4 systems in the state of Arkansas getting into totally disrepair? I'm talking about the future. What are we looking at for the future here? Are we going to see a whole lot more people coming to us going, I ain't got no water?
Well, I feel like there's a couple of things that have happened. The ARPA money has really put a spotlight on the needs of the water and wastewater infrastructure in the state of Arkansas. What was it, 5 billion in need on the initial ARPA infrastructure survey, and that did not capture everything. There is great need out there. Small systems are struggling. The costs are increasing. They're struggling to get operators that are, legal operators, fully licensed operators. They're struggling to cover their O&M costs. All the costs are rising. A lot of our small systems are losing population as well. So as they lose population, the cost goes up even more for the ratepayers that are still there. So it's a balancing act. It's a difficult act. That's why one of our additional criteria is regionalization. If you can spread that cost across multiple systems and you have more people to help carry the cost, it's not as difficult. That's not always the best answer, but it is something to be considered.
So we're gonna see more and more people coming.
I think so. I had a number in here I wrote down just for you, just for that question. On our clean water project priority list, that's wastewater systems primarily. We currently have 134 projects on there for about $862 million. And those are projects that we ask them to add to the list for things they see that they would like to fund in the next 5 years. On the drinking water project priority list, now this one's expanded quite a bit more because EPA has added the lead service line and lead service line inventory requirement. That one has 900 projects for 1.1 billion in need. So there is great need in Arkansas across the state, small systems and large systems. So yes, I expect that we'll see more. And I think you'll see more of the smaller systems coming because ARPA made them more aware of our programs, that we may have money that we can use to assist them.
Word travel fast.
Free money is where it travels fast.
So basically what we're doing now, they're coming in, the guy comes in and says, hey, I cut my arm off. Can you stop the bleeding?
Mhm.
Could you get me a new arm on here?
Mhm.
Instead of having a deal where, you know, let me teach you how to not cut you off.
We try to teach them that through our process, and that's why we recommend the rate increase. All of our loans, our rate increases, standard procedures cover 110%. We add 10% to all of their expenses, not just their O&M, but also to their debt service. It gives them a little bit of extra cushion. We require a 5% reserve up to 10% of the loan amount, so they have at least a little bit of money in the bank, so that when the main breaks, hopefully they have a little bit to help get them through until they can come to us.
There ain't nobody gonna go from top to bottom, gonna go say, hey, y'all gotta increase these rates.
No.
Not unless they're retiring and not running for reelection.
Oh, by the way.
Or unless they can
Hey,
point to
Debbie, do y'all
somebody that
take
you may
into
be.
consideration, like, if you have an application, they have a current bond debt, but it would pay out like, say, in 2028?
So we can.
So you
No,
take that in
We,
consideration?
it depends, you know, on the situation. When we do the analysis, we look at their existing debt. And if it is gonna pay off in a few years, we tend to leave it in there unless they ask us to take it out, because that gives them extra revenue capability for future debt service. However, we'll work with them on their rate structure. We can do tiered rate structures. We can do incremental increases over a period of time. We can take something like that into consideration, but they need to come back to us and let us know. So that's why it's a recommendation letter. When we send that out, we say you need to raise your rate 60%. They can come back to us and say, we can't do 60%, but I could do this. Or I could do this, or we'll set up a meeting with them and we'll talk to them. Well, what can you do? If you can't do 60%, can you do 20% this year and 20% next year? And, you know, to build up so you have enough to make your debt savings. And then we can work with them on as things drop off in the future.
That's not a real rosy picture.
No.
I mean, you could be looking at something like, what was it, Detroit or somewhere where the, no, it was,
Jackson.
Jackson's a great example.
Yeah. That's the problem.
Flint, Michigan.
Flint was the iron in the water, in the pipe. The O&M didn't catch and they didn't get it upgraded and taken out, which is why we have lead, not iron. It was lead in the pipe, which is why we have the lead service line funding that will be coming through here, through the EPA grant in the next year.
Let's move on to good news.
The first thing is the report. It's good news. I like my report. Start on page 1. Here we go. So the first, I'm going to give you our compliance report for the GEO bond program. As we mentioned earlier, you guys approve and issue general obligation bonds. As part of that, you have to do an annual report and on the EMMA system to notify anybody that we've met our requirements. So the two things that we have to do is the arbitrage calculation, should it be required? And then also to file the state financial statements on the MS database. And we've met all of our obligations. We didn't have to do an extension this year. Which is nice, because they got the financial report to us on the due date. Just to give an idea for the arbitrage calculations,
No,
we have 3 more
didn't.
bonds that have arbitrage calculations that will be due on them, but they're not due again for a couple of years. We haven't been issuing tax exempt bonds, and most of our tax exempt has paid off. And with the rates so low, that's arbitrage is caused by when the rates are low and you earn more than you owe on the rates. It's too much investment income, basically, is what it is. We haven't had to worry about that for a while, but we think that's coming back. So here we go. We have to file the financial statement either 210 days or 270 days after the end of the state fiscal year. All of our bond series 2014A and earlier is under the 210 days. That's January 26th. So they did issue the financial statement on the 26th this year. So we were able to file it. And then all of our series 2014B and later, we have extended that to 270 days so that we don't have to file extensions when we don't meet that requirement. So all of that's been done. So that's my report on the deal bond compliance. Any questions? Okay, next we'll move on to recommendations for financial assistance. We have a very short list for you today.
Like good.
I would anticipate that would be different.
Very good, James.
So first up, we have the Lisbon Public Water Authority out of Union County. This is a small project, as you can see, $107,000. We're recommending a loan out of the Water Development Fund for water line extension, some instrumentation and remote sensing. This is an ARPA grant, so this will be the matching funds for the ARPA grant for the $107,000.
Let me ask a question on that ARPA. That's not the ARPA money we gave, is it?
Yes, it is.
Does this overrun?
No. This is the required matching fund for their ARPA grant. You guys had 0, 25, or 50% match requirement. So this project had a matching requirement. This is the match. So this is what Ryan was talking about. Some of them haven't fully secured. These guys are requesting funding to fully secure their match.
Okay. Well, I'm sure we're gonna do this, but I'm sorry to ask that question. All these folks that were funded it, and I think Ryan was saying that, by the end of May, that they gotta have their match lined up, so we're loaning the match too. Well, that's a peachy deal.
Well, they could get the match from several different places. We're just one option for the match. So they could get rural development grants. They could fund it within the community itself. They may have the cash on hand, but for some of them, they'll have to come to us and get the match.
Or raise rates, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I was just thinking, you know, why wouldn't they, if they're not able to get a grant or a loan, less interest of what we offer, why wouldn't they all get in line to come? Well, that's a question I had. I mean, when the work, I'm sure, I'm definitely for this, I'm positive I'm gonna vote for it, but what about when the word gets around that we're providing matches?
But it's already. Everybody knows it.
Yeah.
They already know. I mean, why would somebody not get their match?
So they can get a cheaper grant someplace else.
Idea to be prepared. We have about 200 applications in process, right? Mostly for math. Or they didn't get ARPA at all, so they're requesting funding through one of our funding programs.
So where would the priority be? They didn't get ARPA funds? Or somebody that got ARPA funds, they just looking now for the match from us?
So it depends on the funding source. So the state revolving funds have the capacity to fully fund all the projects.
We won't do them all.
So basically, nobody's gonna come up with a match.
So-
That boils down.
Well, they're gonna pay for it.
They'll get their, I mean,
Most of it'll be,
if, they may have to take a loan to do it, and that'll be the thing is, are they willing to take a loan? So if their project's 25% match, they may have to take a loan for 25%. It'll be a decision on them if they want to take that loan for 25% match.
They should have made that decision way before they ever applied.
Most of them did. Most of them put how they estimated in their ARPA request, how they would fund the project. I mean, that was,
what's gonna be the real decision factor for them, is when we recommend this loan at $107,000, is what type of rate increase comes with that. That's typically when they go back to their council, that's where the decision gets tough.
What is the interest rate?
On this one, this would probably be a 20-year, 2.55, I think is what this one
That's a pretty good deal.
That's good, right? That's good,
That's
right?
the reason why they're coming here, because of the interest rate. Raise the rate and you won't have twice as many people coming.
well, for a lot of our programs, we are below market.
The state revolving, funds, the two federal programs are required to be below market.
That's an interesting question. How's that rate determined?
And so the state program rates are based on, the GEO bond issuance and what type of discount we can offer to cover that, to give them a break so that we're better than. Our goal is to give them the best, cheapest financing we can afford to give them. The federal program is required to be below market. So those, we look at the market rate once a year and then estimate where it should be, and we set it for a full year.
For a full year?
The third.
The bond market. That's what you said.
Yeah, we look at it towards
Not
the
really.
beginning, at the beginning of the year, it's set in the intended use plan is what determines that.
But in that sense, we're subsidized.
Yeah, the federal government subsidizes that one.
So we
That's
get
why we
federal
set it
funds
for
to
a
put
year.
into that pot, which helps subsidize.
And I didn't mean nobody's gonna come, not come, I know they gotta come up with a match, but everybody's gonna come up with it with a grant or.
Right.
Yeah.
You just being on hand cash for the match.
Or they may have the match already. They could have, communities got ARPA. So some communities could use their own ARPA money as match. Possibly, depending on the size of the community and how much they receive.
Next, we have the city of Menifee. We're recommending, $368,826 in a loan from the Water Development Fund for an asbestos cement water line replacement project. This one is not an ARPA match requirement project, so this is a standalone project for $368,000. Next, we have the city of Ogden. We're recommending $80,340 and the loan from the Water Development Fund for tank improvements. This one is a match for the ARPA grant, $80,000, $80,340. Next, we have the city of Ozan. We're recommending $149,021 in a loan from the Water Development Fund for water treatment plant and tank improvements. They actually submitted two separate ARPA grant applications that they were awarded, but we're gonna recommend a single award for a loan to cover both projects for $149,221. City of Taylor, we're recommending a loan and $372,769 from the Water Development Fund for new water meters and SCADA. This one does not have an ARPA grant, so this will be a standalone project, $372,769. I believe that is the last recommendation I have.
Can we go back to the city of Menifee?
Yes, sir.
It shows here, this print, there's a medium household income is over $50,000 a year.
I am telling you, Bruce, new ALR, they have City of Lake Village at 40, almost 40,000, and I know, you know, that is not right.
Yeah. Yeah, but I tell you what, the city of Menifee could be skewed by.
A few,
It only takes one or two people.
yeah, it would take much.
Yeah, I see.
So I'm going to say that correct, based on the data we've been provided by you.
Right.
And we do average 3 years so that if there's a big jump or drop, it doesn't have an immediate impact. It will come gradual over that 3 years.
Make a motion, we accept the staff's recommendation.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. All right.
Maybe I tell you the problem you got, water is just not cool, you know? I mean.
Well, people like water, it's that
It's not cool.
wastewater that they don't think is cool. They don't ever see that.
Until it backs up in their house.
That's right.
I can't get over that. Like, enough, but shit, I'm moving.
That is not, I'm telling you, that is not right.
All
It
right.
moved them, it moved their
I need to
LNE
understand the difference in average and.
from
and
51%
specific.
to 30-something%.
Moving on to the reports, we've got Amanda Mathis first, NRCS.
Well, good morning. Great to be back with you all. It's been a little while. I've been visiting our neighbors in the west, in Oklahoma for a few months. So it's very nice to be back in Arkansas. There is so much going on in the world of NRCS right now. Tremendous activity on our program side. We're well underway under our obligations for our environmental quality incentives program, which has our locally led component, which directly relates back to our conservation districts and the priorities that they've identified. So that's underway right now, but we have recently announced several other funding opportunities that I wanted to call a little bit of attention to this morning. Conservation Stewardship Program, it is out and producers have until March 31st. To apply for that. That is a statewide opportunity. And then we also have some dedicated funds for a Mississippi River Basin Healthy Watershed Initiative in West Craighead, which has mostly Craighead County, but has a little bit of Green, Lawrence, and Jackson as well. So they'll have opportunities for CSP in addition to the regular statewide sign up. For some of our special opportunities that are going on right now through March 31st, producers have an opportunity to apply through our Climate Smart Ag and Forestry Initiative under EQIP. And we've got two kind of special areas that we're looking for applications, and they are geographically based. I won't read all the areas, but we have one pot of funding that'll be set up for improvements on rice production. So that'll be, and it's climate smart, so that's geared at reducing greenhouse gas. It'll be our alternative wetting and drying practice and some of the irrigation management practices related to that. So rice production is one piece in select counties. And then we have a climate smart sign up going on for forestry. And as you might guess, that has a lot to do with carbon sequestration and tree planting and that kind of thing. And that is mainly down South Arkansas area where we have that sign up open. Both of those through March 31st. Then we also have an opportunity for something we did new last year. We're continuing it this year. It's called the Environmental Quality Incentives Conservation Incentives Contracts, EQIP CIC. You know, we love acronyms. And what this program does is it kind of marries a little bit of EQIP and CSP. CSP has always been kind of designed for folks that have kind of their backbone conservation practices in place, and they're going to go to the next level with some more man. Well, that's good, but we have some folks out there that are just not quite ready to make that next jump up to CSP. And so EQIP CIC is designed to let them try some of the management incentive enhancements that we have available under CSP, but still participating through an EQIP contract. So it's a pretty neat thing. Last year and again this year, we are focused on livestock producers. That seems to be the biggest area where we have kind of that gap. And so livestock producers in a number of counties are eligible to apply for EQIP CIC through March 31st. And I've got the counties if you have any particular interest in those. Probably the biggest announcement and opportunity that we're going to see on the horizon for the next few years will be the announcement that we just made about Inflation Reduction Act funding available through our programs. And I know last time in January, I believe Roger Cousins was here and spoke about the tremendous funding that has come to NRCS through the Inflation Reduction Act. And so we've actually started that fiscal year 23. We have received an allocation. And so we have announced signups for an EQIP initiative under IRA and a CSP initiative under IRA. Both of them are very targeted in their approach. The IRA EQIP funding is specific for a certain set of counties, mainly in eastern Arkansas and a few in southern Arkansas. And it's looking at trying to increase the adoption of cover crops, nutrient management, crop rotation, and reduced tillage or no tillage. So those are the only practices that are really eligible, hence why the areas mostly are cropland counties. And that sign up closed yesterday, I believe. I didn't get a chance to pull any application numbers to see where we're at, but that sign up has been announced and has closed. We received a fairly small allocation for 23, but that will ramp up significantly in fiscal year 24 and through 26. And so we'll be working through our state technical committee process and other ways to get feedback about how we can really best utilize the Inflation Reduction Act funding, given the constraints that we have on it being tied directly to greenhouse gas mitigation. How do we make that the best that it can be for Arkansas producers and make it clear for Arkansas producers? Because there's a lot of activity in the sustainability world right now. And there's a lot of things hitting our producers as opportunities to adopt practices. We want to make sure that we're providing good, clear guidance that they know what they're open for our program. So EQIP IRA funding signups ended yesterday. And then for CSP, same thing, producers in Cross, St. Francis, Lee, Phillips, Deshay, and Chico County had until yesterday to sign up for CSP through IRA. Again, a select list of enhancements that will tie directly back to mitigation practices to reduce greenhouse gases. When Roger was here, he mentioned that we had submitted a Joint Chiefs project that is between NRCS and the Forest Service to do some joint project work. We're happy to report that did get funded. So very happy about that. Going to be working in Benton, Washington, Carroll, and Madison County. The new area for us on the Joint Chiefs side, that's in partnership with Oklahoma. A ton of partners on board with that. We really appreciate the support for it. Look forward to getting that out on the street. Arkansas NRCS is about to announce a technical assistance notice of funding opportunity that will be for partners to apply for projects that align with one of our 10 kind of emphasis areas or areas where we'd like to partner with an organization to do technical assistance delivery. So kind of more boots on the ground or activities that help us educate and do outreach rather than anything putting actual practices on the ground. So a little bit of a difference there, but that announcement, I hope will go out by the end of the week. We're very, very close. But on February 27th, USDA national level did release an announcement of funding for up to $70 million that they are going to make available for equity in conservation outreach cooperative agreements. So that's a huge opportunity, a lot of dollars out there for organizations that are interested in doing strategic outreach to historically underserved or unreached populations to make them aware of the natural resource opportunities, our practices, our programs, and that kind of thing. So that is open through April 27th. Last time they did that, we had several applicants from Arkansas. I expect we'll have several again this go around, but that is a nationally managed funding opportunity. I'll wrap up with just a little bit on staffing. I've presented at this commission several years ago about how hard it was to hire anybody. Commissioner Lee, you know that. I mean, we went for a while there and it would just seem like it was pulling teeth for us to be able to hire. And now the pendulum has kind of swung to the other side for sure. And here in the next few months, we're going to be opening up a significant number of entry-level positions, things like our soil conservationists that hopefully come in and go through training to become our district conservationists out in the county. So those positions, soil conservation technicians, as well as a number of other technical positions will be advertised in the coming months. My plea to you all is if you know of any good candidates, we need them. We continue to see fewer and fewer folks on our certificates, and we really, really, really do need help getting outreach to folks. If they're interested in the natural resource field, some of the positions have positive education requirements, others do not. So kind of the full suite there of folks that you may be aware of that have an interest in natural resource management, there may be a fit with us. We would love to get some good diverse candidates on our certificates and be able to hire folks into.
What kind of thing?
Natural
What
resource.
kind of job?
So the soil conservationist is kind of our training position where they're working one-on-one with landowners to develop a conservation plan. They're prescribing conservation practices, designing them, helping them get those implemented through Farm Bill programs, if that's what the producer is.
How you set with biology stuff, man?
We do plan to look at a few biologist positions throughout the state, hoping to reestablish more of our area biologists that we used to have that we kind of seen go by the wayside over the last several years. So I think there's at least 2 or 3 position plans. They're a little lower down on the list, but we'll eventually get there.
What part of the state are they gonna be in, do you know?
The soil conservationists and soil conservation technicians are all over.
How about biology?
Biologists, probably looking at our area office locations, somewhere where we have a technical service center. Jonesboro, Fort Smith, Monticello,
Gotcha.
Lona, yeah. But we'll see how it goes on recruitment. Sometimes we're having to broaden that out a little bit because recruiting, like I said, is getting really tough, but lots of activities going on, lots of opportunities for us to continue partnering, going to be, I think, mandatory that we continue to find ways to partner, to leverage our resources, to work together collectively to solve many of the issues and get our producers the right mix of programs to help them solve their needs. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Great to meet you.
Hey, CD.
I will not drag this out. I apologize for my lateness. I got back from DC kind of late last night, so it was really a hurdle to get up this morning, but things are going just fine there. But no, we do have a lot of things that are coming down the pike now that we have meetings again. There's meetings upon meetings. We have already started setting up our area meetings. Those will be held in person this year. We do find the Zoom to work wonderfully just to take care of business, but it does not provide us the educational opportunities and the networking and things like that we need. So we've already started those. Next week, members of the executive board will be going to DC. We do our NACD fly-in. We will be meeting at Bozeman's office and several other offices to talk about the different priorities that we have, the different concerns that we have. We know they're coming up with a new farm bill that Senator Bozeman yesterday said that he feels like they're going to finish this year. And so we want to make sure that we get our voice heard. We will be talking about, we do normally include 319 in our packet, our support for that. We also include support for the Clean Water Revolving Fund. And so if there's anything else y'all want included in that, please let us know. Otherwise, we go in there and it's pretty basic, saying that we need to continue to provide programs for our farmers, our ranchers, and our producers. Now, one of the things that you heard Amanda talk about, all the programs that are out there. Well, with Bright, the Climate Smart projects, 29 of them in Arkansas. How do farmers know which one works best for them? How do they know it's in their county? So it's a partnership meeting that Chris chaired earlier. We did come up with the idea that perhaps we need to coordinate and have something that is a resource that is available at the district and available to farmers. So they can look at it and say, okay, my county, here's the programs that are available. Here's what I want to apply for. Here's what I choose to apply for, because our concern is they need to understand if you apply for cover crops under this program, you can't do the same acres with cover crops with another program. We don't want to find that they get into trouble just by lack of knowledge. So I think that's going to be a really helpful tool. It's going to take some time to get it all together because there's a lot, we've got to get all the NRCS stuff in there as well as the other programs, but that's pretty positive. Okay, we do have the Women in Ag meeting. We're coming up next week. April 3rd, I'm sorry, it'll be coming up April 3rd. And then we have, a variety of other things that we're continuing to work on, the nutrient strategy thing that we did with Kate Mann and her group and Mike Daniels. So there's lots of things going on, but I would say probably the biggest thing on our agenda right now is this right proposal. I have a meeting with some of my folks tomorrow to start talking about what we need to do. There's gonna have to be training, comment training, field market training. Those are skills that we're gonna have to bring in people that already know that information. And because when the districts hire these technicians, they're gonna have some knowledge about that. And so our first meeting is gonna be tomorrow to talk about what do we need to do in the way of outreach, what type of flyers. We're gonna contract with somebody to develop those flyers for us. And we have contracted with somebody to do our writing coordinator. So, it's gonna be very busy, but we are always open. If you have anything that you ever need or want from us, you have only to ask. And again, if there's anything you can think of that we really need to focus on, as we go to DC next week, please let me know. And we will do our best to reach out and do that. And, I'll be glad to, we also have Arkansas Envirothon will be held April the 20th. It's going to be at the Woolly Hollow, State Park. As many of you know, that was the very first watershed built in the nation, by NRCS. And that's why it's called Lake Bennett, after Hugh Hammond Bennett. So that will be our Arkansas Envirothon. Our Arkansas Forestry Clinic will be held, probably later in April. And that would normally is held down in the Southwest because that's where most of our competing teams are. So all of those youth activities continue to go on, as well as our area meeting, our annual meeting, July 12th and 13th. They were willing to change. We appreciate that because that's the only thing the hotel could do. And, but we have started, what programs that we need to be offering. Hear a lot about carbon credits. Folks aren't sure what to do about, long-term. And so, our goal is not to say this should or this shouldn't. Our goal is to say, do you have all the facts? And if you have all the facts, that's your decision to make as an individual. Anything else?
What meeting did we move?
That was the end of the meeting, July 12th.
Which one did we cancel?
Oh, the week next week. It was supposed to be the next week, but the hotel couldn't do the next week. So it was supposed to be the 19th to 20th, but y'all were the 19th, but we couldn't do that, so y'all agreed to get back to the 12th.
Same month though.
Yeah, July. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, University of Arkansas 12th extension, Dr. Daniels.
Yes, sorry I couldn't be there in person today, and my camera's not working. But that may very well be a blessing to you all, not having to look at me, so.
Yeah, shorter presentation.
But I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak to the commissioners and the board. I just have a few things here. We did have our first meeting of the nutrient reduction strategy, the innovation committee to look at what future needs might be, how to best prioritize tier 2 watersheds or those that do not have enough data to say one way or the other if nutrients are increasing or decreasing, and prioritize those. And we've come up with a process to prioritize those. And we had a really good, productive meeting of a diverse group of stakeholders in water quality. I want to thank Tate Wentz and especially Katie Mann for all the work they've done behind the scenes to set that committee up and to get us started. Katie's been tremendous help. But I think we're off to a good start on that. The second thing is that we're moving more and more of our programming on Discovery Farms into climate change and addressing how farmers can benefit from climate change services, storing carbon, reducing greenhouse gases. So we're starting to monitor those. We're starting to get some grant money. I'm currently involved in 2 projects, one for cotton and one for corn and soybeans, that we're going to be monitoring with Dr. Chris Bry from the University of Arkansas, a researcher well known for his work in monitoring greenhouse gases. And so
we're excited about that. We're gonna continue to seek funding for that to help farmers benefit from this, and I think they can benefit from it. As Debbie said, there's a lot of money out there that's gonna be used as incentives to get farmers to put practices in, and we're gonna monitor the effectiveness of those practices through those programs. As far as personnel, we do have a new soil specialist that is focusing on forages. Bronk Finch, Dr. Bronk Finch, he comes to us from Oklahoma State University. He's already hit the ground running, but we felt like with the number of acres in forages, we needed a soil specialist dedicated to forages. We will be hiring a soil specialist that will be stationed at the Northeast Arkansas Rice Research and Extension Center in near Harrisburg. That advertisement will go out later this summer, and that soil specialist will work primarily with row crop. And then we also are in the process of advertising right now for a cotton and peanut specialist. We've traditionally had a cotton specialist. We've not had a peanut specialist. So we've combined this and asked, with the acreage down in cotton, we've asked this person to be, we've written this position to be both cotton and peanut. As a peanuts now have a board and a little bit of funding money as we continue to grow more peanuts. I did want to mention that I felt like we had a very successful Discovery Farm conference. I wanted to thank our planning committee and Debbie Moreland for all of her advice to the planning committee. One of the things that came out of that is, and it's too big to put in the chat, or I would, but you can go to our website and you can find a 72-page summary of results from Discovery Farms and activities. It's called MP 275. But if you want to learn more about our Discovery Farms, it's pretty easy reading. It's not data intensive, but it gives you a good idea of what we're trying to do with that program. We have officially started the Discovery Wildlife and Forestry Farm, a Dan Rowe farm down at Camden. We've got to find more funding. We're going to be actively looking for more funding, but we've got 5 universities involved in that. University of Arkansas Monticello, University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, Arkansas State University, and then Southern Arkansas University. And we really are thankful to have those partners and those universities involved. We are starting a Arkansas Discovery Watershed program. Instead of doing just edge of field monitoring, we're going to try to learn more about what does the edge of field monitoring data mean with respect to the entire watershed. We have chosen Brush Creek, Northwest Arkansas, and what we hope to do someday is, while we're monitoring, is also find partners that are willing to help provide incentives for farmers to adopt best management practices or conservation practices so that we can see the net effect in a watershed. It's going to be a little bit more challenging, but Dr. Shannon Spear, a new water scientist with us, will be handling that work. And we had a little bit of discussion about water soaking into soils and runoff, and I can tell you that we just published, it's been accepted for publication, some of the results from our Discovery Farm in the Agronomy Journal that talks about the fact that in eastern Arkansas, we have some poorly drained soils, and we can lose as much as 45% of our rainfall to runoff, almost 50%. And I think cover crops are helping us improve infiltration rates, and I think it's something that we've got to consider. When you think about almost 50% of your rainfall running off, and we're not holding that and storing it in our soils, you could have if we could get better infiltration across all of eastern Arkansas, it could have a significant effect on our irrigation water needs. We might be able to decrease those. And so we're going to continue to do those type of studies to look at that. And with that, I can answer any questions, but I certainly appreciate your time and willingness to listen to my report this morning.
Any questions for Dr. Daniels? Thank you so much. All right, UAPB, Dr. White.
Good morning. Yeah. Okay. Good morning. I apologize also for not being there today. I am stepping in place of Dr. McGowan, who is in a meeting in DC with the congressional delegates for the 2023 Farm Bill. But I kind of just want to give an overview of what we're doing with UAPB. Also, through our partnership, I won't reinvent the wheel because we're partnering with Arkansas Discovery Farms, Mike Daniels. I've been working with him since 2014. And I also had the privilege to complete my PhD back in 2017 with Arkansas Discovery Farm Research. And so here at UAPB, we have continued to do the edge of field monitoring and also kind of help our farmers with nutrient management and adoption of cover crops and also implementing other conservation practice. So what we're doing now, I just got funding on, I guess week before last with the, we'll be working with Arkansas Discovery Farm with the climate smart practices for historically underserved farmers here in Jefferson County and also Lonoke County. And we'll be also with that funding, we're going to implement the first development of a Arkansas Discovery Farm Educational Center here on campus. And the reason why that is very, very important is for two things: to target our farmers. We talk about the historically underserved farmers, and a lot of times they have limited resources or lack of knowledge of different programs. So here at this education center, partnering with Arkansas Discovery Farm, we plan on training our farmers. And with this program, we'll be developing a climate smart pilot program for farm education and also training, and try to influence our minority farmers to adopt climate smart practices. And Intel will be able to help them put in different irrigation systems. We'll monitor greenhouse gases again, as Mike has said before. And also we want to be able to work with them to not only with nutrient management and sediment control, but also conserve water on their fields. So we'll also be implementing some irrigation systems through this funding. But along with trying to train our producers, as NRCS has said early on, is, you know, trying to find qualified or enough people to fill jobs. Just on yesterday, we were able to have workshops for our students here on campus, teaching them how to develop conservation plans. We want to make sure, you know, with this education center, that not only are our students are equipped to be able to have the experience to get these jobs when they graduate, but also work along with our farmers. And so that it will help them learn skills and training and working with the farmers one-on-one. Another thing that we want to do with this educational center, I'm waiting on another funding project that I applied for. We're going to create a mobile lab, agriculture mobile lab. And with that, I have my water quality system, among other things, set up in that mobile lab. We want to go into the public schools. I spoke at the Arkansas Discovery Farm Conference some weeks ago and explained how within our community, a lot of students have this misconception of what ag is. And so with that funding, the plan is to be able to attract kids through grades K through 12 to those different jobs in conservation and natural resources and things of that nature, just so they can see what ag is, really is. It's not just about getting dirty. So through this UAPB Educational Center, which will be the first on a college campus in the state of Arkansas, we're going to, start now that I've received the funding, start getting that together along with Arkansas Discovery Farm with Mike Daniels and working with him with his group and try to get this up off the ground. So like I said, we want to be able to train our students, undergraduate students, to be able to enter the workforce. Not only that, attract K through 12 to majoring in ag careers when they matriculate through school, and also be able to train and educate our farmers and supply those the education for them of things that they don't know about, how to conserve the land and how to build soil health. Just be able to be more productive, informing while saving our community and saving, reducing the greenhouse gases and things of that nature. So that's what we'll be doing. And I can entertain any questions if anyone have any.
Questions for Dr. White?
This is Bruce Leggett. I was out when you started your presentation. What job do you have at UAPB?
Sir,
What job do you have at UAPB?
I facilitate the Mississippi River Basin Initiative here on campus, and I'm also over our 1890 Scholars Program, which was written in the last Farm Bill. Our school, the 1890 land grant schools received $2 million to fund students to major in ag careers. And so the students in that program, they work with me with the edge of field monitoring, but they also do other things and, you know, other career interests in ag as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. White, thank you so much.
Mhm.
All right, USGS, got Joey Fleming.
Good morning, everyone, nearly afternoon. My name is Joey Fleming, work for USGS here in Little Rock. I am the field operations chief of the stream gauging program. In Arkansas, we've got an office in Little Rock and one in Fayetteville. Although we're a small office and one kind of big happy family, doing a lot of different disciplines, I'm over specifically the stream gauging program, but I do have some updates for our water quality program also. So currently, with the stream gauging network, we operate about 200 gauges in the state of Arkansas. 37 of them NRD helps to support here in the state. These range from full flow gauges, so stage to discharge sites and stage only sites, depending on agency needs. Currently, in the last quarter, we've had about 4 moderate to high flow events, 2 notable events in February. Those were mainly in West Central Arkansas through Central Arkansas and East Arkansas. During those events, we had some pretty large flows. A couple gauges that were installed in the last 10 to 15 years actually reached the peak of record events. Because these weren't, old gauges, but we were seeing some pretty high flow events. One of them, for instance, is Dutch Creek at Waltrip that we recently moved. We weren't able to actually get out there to measure that event, but we are going to recreate that using what we refer to as an indirect method. So after we go out there and do some field reconnaissance and measure some high water marks, we'll actually survey that in, recreate that discharge event, and add that to our discharge rate. During the last couple of events, we've been lucky to get some peak measurements. One notable one is Buffalo River at Pruitt. So the highway department recently installed a new bridge there, making the upper end of our discharge rating slightly less accurate. We were able to do quite a few measurements there and update our ratings, so we're computing highly accurate discharge data there. Yep. Currently, just kind of going forward out of quarter, we are experiencing some moderate to high flows out in East Arkansas. We've got crews out there measuring right now in the White River and the Black River. I'm getting some really good data. So yesterday we were there at White River at Newport. They're moving up a little bit north now, and they're on the Black River. We're up to date on what we refer to as our continuous record processing. So we have a field element that we do. So get out and get the stage discharge measurements. We also have to come in and apply our QA/QC protocols to our data, make sure our corrections are up to date, our shift ratings are as accurate as possible. Right now, we're looking on schedule for our April 1st deadline that we imposed on ourselves to have last year's data completely reviewed and approved. So earlier when we were looking at some of the groundwater hydrographs, you may or may not notice there was a period of green approved data. And then right at the end of the year, you'll see provisional data. Right now, we're in the process of making sure all of last year's data is switched from provisional to approved. Okay. Water quality wise, we operate about 40 real-time water quality gauges in the state. NRD helps to support about 5 of those right now. We've been doing multiple visits. Those are normally visited monthly to check calibration and drift standard on those. Everything's going well. We operate about 9 sites that we do continuous water quality sampling on. We've been out there and we're on schedule to have all of that completed. The Buffalo River filamentous algae project is in its last year of data collection. They're working that up right now. It's looking really well. If that was to continue, I think there would be some discussion of how to move forward with that coming next year. Groundwater, We operate about 48 gauges throughout the set of real-time groundwater sites. NRD helps to support 18 of those. Everything's going really well there. I think we're very close to having everything from the last year approved, data-wise from those. In April, so coming up really soon, we're looking at doing what we refer to as our synoptic run that we operate with this group and other state agencies. We're looking at doing 800 water levels in Arkansas this year, individual water level measurements. That's with NRD, NRCS, ARS, and other county districts. Yeah. The last thing I have here to update everyone on is our water use program. Everything's on schedule there, doing well. It includes about 25 real-time or water use meters that we operate. Everything's looking well for those and up to date for this upcoming irrigation. Yeah. So USGS, we handle a lot of field activities, data mining, data reconnaissance in the field. We're happy to have kind of a under the radar success in the state. So, with that, any questions?
And your water quality, maybe, is that just looking at surface water or y'all also look at subsurface water?
We do have, for real-time sites, we're only a surface water at this time. We have looked at some real-time groundwater in the past. We do have what we refer to as the master well programs that moves aquifer to aquifer every year in the state. And we do some water quality work on groundwater. Yes, sir.
Do y'all have anything going like the south part of Chico County?
We have in the past, yes, sir.
Yeah, they had a real problem solving underground water supply down there.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Years.
It moves,
Still do.
yeah, yes, sir. That moves aquifer. I'm not sure where we are in the schedule on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, energy and environment, Caleb Osborne.
All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Caleb Osborne. I am the Director of DEQ and the Chief Administrator of the Environment. Appreciate the opportunity to come here and introduce myself, say hello to some familiar faces, meet some new folks. This is an important commission, and the Natural Resources Division is an important agency for us to partner with and work with. And I think it's something you'll hear from time to time references to energy and environment, or specifically my team, which is the Division of Environmental Quality. Somebody mentioned earlier about wastewater and how no one really enjoys the wastewater part. Well, we get to do Office of Water Quality, which is one of my programs under my purview. We get to deal with that all the time, issuing the permits and doing the enforcement and all that. And then you all have the benefit of providing the money that's going to help solve some of those problems. So I've kind of envied this commission a little bit, because a lot of times we feel like we cause the problems and you all help reach the solution. And so our permittees tend to enjoy meeting with you all, with the staff here, a lot more than dealing with us. But just very briefly, I've been in state government now about 8 years. I most recently have been with the Department of Park Heritage and Tourism, was the chief of staff for that department for the last 4 years. Prior to that, I had been at DEQ as the head of the Office of Water Quality. So I was the one that was ruining everyone's day when we were enforcing against their wastewater permit. And doing some of the water quality work, that a lot of what has been talked about today happened with that team. So kind of within our department, y'all may not have as much interaction. We have a new secretary, Shane Corey, who has been on chief counsel under that role. I've come in as the head of the DEQ side, the environmental side. Just so you know, for energy and environment, in case y'all have some interaction with them, our energy side of the house is the chief administrator for energy is Larry Dingle, who's the longtime oil and gas commission director. He also is overseeing a few other programs, the Arkansas Energy Office, and some of the our mining program and some other things like that. I maintain or oversee the Office of Air Quality, Office of Water Quality, and what we call our Office of Land Resources, that's solid waste, has waste, in underground storage tanks. So from time to time, I will like to be here and have us be better connected with what's going on with this commission, with the division. You may not always see me, because unfortunately I pulled in a lot of different directions, all the time. My associate chief administrator of the environment, Bailey Taylor, who I believe has presented to this commission before. You will likely see her or maybe a representative from our Office of Water Quality at different meetings going forward. But it's our intention to engage more because, one, the work that you all do is vital to helping bring our goal with, especially with wastewater. Our goal is to have, permitted facility operating in compliance. And if they're not operating in compliance, we need to get them back there. And as the discussion around some of the funding opportunities that are provided through this agency, the commission can improve. That's a vital tool to getting folks back into compliance. And so we appreciate that. There's also a lot of the work that's done, some of the nutrient strategy stuff and other watershed planning that you all do. It's also critical for how we administer our program. So we have been engaged. We'll continue to be engaged and seek to work well and be good partners. And so the director's nodding his head, so it's good. He's got me on record now. And I think we'll continue to see it with, I know there's a lot of work going on with the Illinois River watershed. Going to continue to be, we have some permitting issues that we're working through with some communities up there, but I think they dovetail in some issues that the Natural Resource Division is working on as well. We also had yesterday, EPA announced before some things related to PFAS and some of these new contaminant, emerging contaminant things. We are still digesting and understanding what all that implicates, but I know you all, we will be working very closely with this agency and this team, and I'm sure some of it will come to the commission, because I think there's gonna be some money tied to some of these programs. So I will not stand any longer between you and the close of business for this meeting and lunchtime, but I wanted to let y'all have at least a brief introduction, say hello, share kind of my commitment and my goal for our team to work well together as we go forward. And, as we face all these challenges and opportunities we have, I think we'll go a lot further as we partner well. So thank y'all. It's good to meet y'all. Thanks for letting me be here.
Thank you so much. Very good. Any other business come before the commission? If not, can we get a motion to adjourn?
I make that motion.
Second.
Come on back.
Right.
Stand adjourned.
When's our next meeting? Later.
Recording stopped.
Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Well,
I just doing that.